everyone, it's Sharana from Payorwait, and today I'm going to be reviewing and recapping Succession Season 4, Episode 9, Church and State. So we have finally made it to Logan's funeral, and there is a lot happening. Like, it's one thing to be at a funeral where you're mourning the loss of someone, but there are so many powerful people in this room. There's so many things that have happened from the election results that we saw from last week, with Jared now being the president-elect after he has to go through a long court battle. But there is a lot on the table for the taking, and it actually seems like Kendall is going to be the one to step up and try to take his rightful place. But Shiv isn't going to let him get too far, though, which I appreciate about her, but, you know, I still be a little iffy about Shiv half of the time. So in this episode, we see that it opens up with Shiv. She's watching TV. She's watching the aftermath of what has happened because ATN is the one who called the election, and now Jared Mencken is the president-elect. Shiv has always made it known that she does not care for his ideology, does not care for him as a person. So she seems to be very affected at the fact that her brothers have helped elect this man into the presidency. So we see that there's protests that are happening outside of ATN. You know, they're kind of concerned because they have the funeral going on. There's people who are upset with ATN, so you just don't know, you know, what is actually going to happen at this funeral. And I was kind of on the edge of my seat, wondering, like, were the protests going to affect, you know, the funeral and what was happening. But we see that Matsson, you know, he calls Shiv and says, like, you know, what does this mean? What's going on? Like, you know, she's telling him you need to release the numbers. At this point, because Mencken actually won when we didn't think he was going to, you know, this is basically going to be an easy news cycle for you to, you know, put something that would have made headlines, but because of Jared's speech, because of the protests that are happening, because of kind of this murky water with ATN calling this election when they probably shouldn't have, you know, he can really kind of skate by without anyone saying anything about it. But Matsson just doesn't want to. I don't think that Matsson really wants to do anything that he doesn't want to do. And maybe if it's because Shiv is, you know, giving him this advice, why he doesn't necessarily want to take it. But I found their conversation to be very interesting. Because he was like, you guys have only had a democracy for, what, 50 years? And she was like, excuse me? And he was like, he was like, if you don't count black people, which is what y'all do sometimes. And I was like, Matsson, let her know. And then when she was like, well, okay, like, she couldn't even say anything to it. And then with her saying, like, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Shiv, do tell. How is it more complicated, Shiv? But I was dying laughing when he was just like, slavery? Black people, you ignore them, you still kill them. Like, girl, what is you talking about? I was dying laughing. Like, I had to pause for a moment because I just was so touched that it was so easy for him to see. And she was just like, well, okay. Like, but is it really though? Like, I think we've had a good democracy for quite some time now. But we see that the siblings, they all get into the car, and then Shiv asks Roman the question, is Mencken coming? And he was like, I don't know. Is Matsson coming? And she kind of just, you know, makes a face and brushes it off now that they know that Shiv has betrayed them, and her alliance falls with Matsson. Really, her alliance falls with whoever can get her the best deal. Shiv has always been someone to look out for herself and make sure that she covers all sides of the table. But before all of this, we see Roman in this, like, Roman is feeling good. And I was like, I don't know about you, but if I was going to my father's funeral, I don't know if I would be as upbeat. But he seems to found a pep in his step. His man has won the presidency. You know, he's the one who helped make that call. And so he's feeling himself a little bit. He's going through his speech because this speech is important, because you're making this speech in front of all of these powerful people. And so if Roman is able to make a speech that can bring people to their feet, or can't bring nobody to their feet because we at a funeral, but, you know, bring the audience to a thunderous applause, this solidifies his space as CEO. This solidifies the relationship with him being able to control the president. So there's a lot on the line for Roman, but he feels very confident about it. We see him rehearsing his speech. You know, he goes to meet with all of the siblings. I thought it was really funny when he went to Frank at the funeral, because they all end up going to the funeral together, the siblings. But that was interesting. Like, why would you go to Frank? You know Frank can't stand you, especially after all the chaos that y'all caused when you were basically doing the speeches to the investors. But Frank, he was kind of just trying to get him on the side, and Frank was just like, it's a no for me, dog. And he just kind of walked away. I felt bad bad for Kendall at the beginning of the episode because, you know, Kendall's worried about these election results. We actually see Kendall be a concerned father, which is, I don't know. I mean, his kids kind of come and go, so I almost forget that he has children, that he has his ex-wife, this family that he used to have at the beginning of the season. And, you know, his daughter's worried. You know, they had this situation happen, you know, where the daughter felt threatened. You know, his ex-wife, Rob, like, she's very stressed out about it as well. And so we see that he's talking to her, and she was like, hey, I'm packing the kids up. Like, we have to go. I need to make sure that, you know, our children are safe. And Kendall's not having it. Man, Kendall goes to block her car. He's acting very erratic and going off. And it's kind of heartbreaking because, you know, you feel for Kendall because you know it's his dad's funeral, right? You want your family around you. You want your kids to be able to say goodbye to their grandfather, but you sympathize more with Rob. I did personally because she's trying to keep her kids safe. I mean, even Kendall's getting worried. He's seeing people boarding up their houses. You know, it looks like people are kind of rallying. We see people with gasoline cans. You know, there's protests that are going to be happening, and they don't know if these protests are going to become deadly, going to become violent. We don't know because at this point, the world is literally on fire. And so he sees these images as he's trying to get to the funeral. Then when he has to make the beeline to go be you know, with his ex-wife and, you know, his child. And for him to still act that way, and she's pleading with him, like, please just don't do this. I'm trying to make sure that, like, we are safe. I got to get out of here. Like, you do not understand how dangerous this is at this point in time. So him telling Jess afterwards that, you know, call the family attorneys. I want to get custody. And I'm just like, Kendall, you can barely take care of yourself. How are you going to have time to have custody of your children when you're basically going to put them with nannies? Like, why would you even do something like that? It's kind of classic Kendall. You know, he's just going to, like, berate himself through the problem, worry about consequences later, doesn't really take time to sit back and think on what would actually be the best option for his children instead of just thinking about himself. So, you know, he looks at his schedule and then he sees that Jess set up a meeting, which is really interesting because he says, like, well, what's this meeting about? And I was like, oh, Jess for the quit. She said, y'all are sinking ship, honey. And he's like pressuring her to say it. She's like, bruh, your daddy did. Like, let's go ahead and bury him. This is not the day for us to be having this conversation. And so in a very awkward way, she kind of lets him know, like, you know, I'm looking for other opportunities. And then he's like, is this about Macon? And then she's like, well, B, you said it, I didn't say it. But without saying anything, she kind of alludes that, you know, it has to do with them picking Macon as kind of their war horse. And it's really interesting because you understand Jess, you know, making this decision, and it's the right decision. But as we get to the end of the episode, especially as we're coming out of the church after the funeral, I don't know, Jess, you might have made your bed a little bit too early, and now you got to lay in it. So it's interesting to see what happens. And he was like, and why would you tell me it's the day of all days? Now, Kendall, you asked Jess. Jess said, don't worry about it. It's your dad's funeral. Like, let's talk about something else. You pushed her, so you cannot be a victim right now. That just makes no sense to me whatsoever. But in the midst of all of this, we see that Jerry's having this conversation. So it's Jerry, Frank, and Carl. And basically Jerry asked Frank and Carl, like, hey, how much are you going to miss him? And they were like, I'm going to miss, he's a good man. And then she's like, y'all got Stockholm Syndrome. Like, Jerry don't give no F's. Like, I don't like this man. This man finna fire me. Literally the day that he died, he sent his little raggedy son to come and fire me. She's like, I don't care. She said, I don't care about him. I'm surprised she didn't spit on his grave when everybody left. But that had me dying. But it's interesting because we see that Shiv's having this conversation. So Shiv's trying to play her cards, and, you know, everybody's trying to get their ducks in a row. Shiv has a conversation with Mattson, and basically, you know, he ends up confirming to her that he released the numbers. We see Hugo tell Kendall about the numbers being released, how he flooded with subscribers in India, and she floats her name for CEO. She basically says, like, hey, in order to get this deal to work, in order for Mencken to not, you know, reject this bill, reject this acquisition, basically, you know, maybe you should float having a U.S. CEO, so it'll make him feel a little bit more comfortable to let this deal go through. Of course, Shiv floats her name. Even Matson looking at her like, "Beach, ain't you pregnant?" Like everybody clocked Shiv being pregnant. As soon as they saw their mama, like the mama looked at her up and down like, "Is it something you want to tell me?" Now, if this is the black mom, they would have been like, "Girl, I was dreaming about fish the day before." But yeah, she clocked that she was pregnant. Matson like, "Well, word on the street, girl, you pregnant, so how you gonna be pregnant, be CEO?" She talking about like, all I gotta do is get a baby in 36-hour maternity leave, and I'm gonna be back. Like, I don't have to raise this kid. And I was just like, someone called CPS on Shiv. Because when Shiv took that sip of alcohol in front of Tom, I was so heated. Because I was just like, you're so childish at times. And I'm going to lose my feminist card. But Shiv does, they all emotional actually. So I'm not even going to just say that on Shiv. I just don't think Shiv is fit to be CEO. Like Matson said, she lacks experience. I think that Shiv does a lot of stuff out of spite. And I don't know if Shiv ever has an original idea of her own if it doesn't involve her, being on the come up in some way, shape, or form. And so that whole interaction between her and Tom, things have been weird between them. Tom tries to apologize to her, but I just think she drinking the champagne in front of him. If I was Tom, I'd be like, "See, bitch, this is what I be talking about. Every time I try to just see you as a good person, you just do something to just make me feel like, do I want this person to like be the mother of my child?" Even when they told her, they were like, she told Roman and Kendall like, "Hey, I'm pregnant." And they're like, "Oh, like it's Tom the father?" Like even Tom was like, "Am I the father? What's going on?" Like I don't know. I just feel bad for this baby. Even the whole conversation and her and her mom joking like, "Oh well, I'll just like give her up for other people to like take care of like you did us." I'm just like, a lot of y'all need therapy and y'all need healing. And I just really want that for you, okay? But while we're talking about her raggedy mama, why did Shiv's mom, after she clocked Shiv being pregnant, she goes and seeks out Kari and was like, "Hey, you can come sit with me." And she's like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "Yeah, come on." And then she runs into this lady. She's like, "Sally Ann?" And then I was like, "Girl, who's Sally Ann?" And so then she go take Sally Ann to be Marsha. I was like, "You think Marsha really want to be around Kari right now?" But then she's like, "Hey Marsha, this is Sally Ann." Sally Ann was like to me like Kari was to you. So that was, Roman's little side piece. And, Sally Ann like, "Girl, it's water under the bridge now. The man's dead. Like, go ahead and let it go." So it was all him and his mistresses sitting on the front row. She told her, "Come on, girl, come sit with us. You was banging her too. Come on, Kari." So they took her up there. She was sitting there. I did think it was cute. Marsha kind of like, put her hand on her hand. It seems like Marsha's really at peace with everything that has happened. We see later in the episode where she tells Shiv, like, he broke my heart. He broke your heart. I still love him. It is what it is. It's water under the bridge. But I was dying laughing because when Grandpa went up there to go make that speech, and Greg had one job. He told him, "Do not let your grandpa go up there and speak," because he couldn't stand Logan. But he said he loved his brother, but he said he had a lot of rot in him, okay? He ain't ish. And y'all sitting up there trying to tell me I can't speak at my dead brother's funeral because y'all afraid of some little stock price because your daddy raggedy and I'm going to tell the truth and shame the devil later. It sent me. And when he told his mama to shut up, I was like, "Oh, Greg, we told my mama to shut up." And she's like, "Don't tell me to shut up." And I was like, "That's right, don't tell her to shut up." But he did his speech, and I guess that did something to Roman, because, baby, he had all of them sitting on the edge of their seat. It was like an okay speech until he got into, like, he was an evil man and all of that stuff. But I thought it was interesting how when he comes back, Greg tells his granddad, like, "Hey, that was a good hard take that you did." Which, Greg is just so funny. Even his whole thing with Tom, like, "I want to be a will man," which, is that like a white people thing? Because we call it pallbearers. And I never saw in the whole episode Greg actually touched a casket, so I thought that whole thing was weird for them to have that interaction, but I never see Greg touch the casket. Did he do it in the beginning? Actually, he did do it in the beginning because he was standing with his granddad. I take that back. Okay. But is that like a white people thing, a willman? Because, like, we call it pallbearers. I've never heard that before. I'm just interested. Let me know in the comment section below if that's what you said, a cultural thing or just a rich people thing or yeah, I don't know. Just let me know. But so Roman's supposed to go up and do this speech. And Roman's talking all this smack. Like, I just like, okay, go ahead, do your thing. Kendall's like, give him the other side. baby, he broke down. I almost broke down. I'm not gonna lie. When my father died, they had to carry me out of the church. Okay, I was Logan, probably worse though. But I was a little 5-year-old snotty nosed kid. They had to carry me out of the funeral because I was acting up, causing a scene. Okay, I probably would have tried to jump in the casket if I was tall enough to get into it. So it took me out to see Roman break down like that. But Kendall, he stepped up. He gave a really great speech. And it really felt like a full circle moment for Kendall's character, because to see everything that Kendall has has went through, it almost feels like their father's death has kind of reignited something within all of them. It's kind of like him dying was the last thing that they needed to be on their own, to make their own decisions, to be bold. And I thought that him giving that speech, and then you see everyone, the thunderous applause after it's over. She went up there and she did her thing, like, but I was just like, okay, girl, like, go sit down. But I thought it was very nice to see Kendall. You know, Kendall's kind of been proving himself. You know, Roman left him up there to bomb at the investor shareholder meeting, and he killed it, and he's killing this. And I think that really solidified Kendall as somebody to watch, as someone who can actually take over this company if the deal doesn't go through. Or, as we see Madison, you know, after they kind of get it approved with Minkin at the end of the episode, that I feel like Kendall is the one for the job. I feel like Kendall is going to do what it takes. He held it together. He got it together. That walk out of the funeral, Madison patted him on his back. Jared shook his hand. Like, even Jess was looking shook, like, damn, I probably made the wrong decision. And Hugo tells him what happens with Shiv floating her name, and then it just ignites something even more. And I think it would be very interesting to see, because we saw at the end of the episode, he told Shiv that I'm on board with a U.S. CEO, but he didn't say who. And I do think that Madison is going to, like, screw Shiv over in the end. I really think that people just play into her emotions. They take advantage, and then they kind of leave her dead in her tracks. So I think it's really interesting to see what happens. And we know she's pregnant. People already don't believe in women. They're probably going to look at her like, she's going to have a baby now, and that's going to change things. So I don't think that is going to work out. Kendall's upset because they try to talk to Mencken, then Greg pops up, then Roman pops up, then Connor pops up, then Shiv pops up. Shiv takes him away while they talk about their deal. And so Kendall goes to Roman and tells him, like, hey, you effed this up. You didn't do this speech. You didn't do what you were supposed to do. You effed the deal up. Now we have to beg him when he should be begging us at this point in time. And I need you to help me take out Shiv. I need you to help me figure all of this out. Roman kind of, everything just gets to him, and he goes out, starts antagonizing protesters. I just don't understand. Like, clearly he's hurting, he needs help. And he gets hit, and, you know, that's kind of it with Roman. But Kendall, they go to the funeral, they, you know, they let their dad go, and he talks to Hugo. He tells Hugo, I'm about to make a play. You could be in my corner. You're not going to be a collaborator. You're going to be a dog, but there's going to be scraps worth millions. And Hugo was like, woof, woof, give me my money, all right? He hires Colin, his dad's old driver. I was like, nah, you didn't have to tell him that you knew he was going to talk to a therapist. Like, how you get this information? But Kendall was willing to do what he got to do. And I'm here for the hunger, okay? Do what you got to do, Kendall. So, yeah, I'm very interested to see what is going to happen. But we know that Kendall wants to fight Shiv at the board. And so it will be very interesting to see what is going to happen. I do think that Kendall's going to be the one who wins. That is my hope. It will make everything come full circle from where we found him at the beginning of this series to how we ended. I don't know how the hell that they're going to end this all in one episode. Honestly, I wish they would have kept going another season to see the kids duke it out. I think with Logan being gone, it actually changes the dynamic a little bit. And I'm interested to see how that's going to work out. Don't know what's going to happen with Shiv and Tom. Like, they get back together, then she do some crazy stuff, he do some crazy stuff. I don't know what's going to happen. They're going to blame the whole ATN thing on him. I'm sure this going to come back to bite him in the butt. But I'm very interested to see what's going to happen in next week's episode. I do not know how they're going to wrap this up. I just feel like there's so much that just happened in this episode alone. that could keep going, but let me know in the comment section below, what did you think about this episode? I think that last week's episode was great. This week's episode is great. Everything has been fantastic. I hate that this is like the end of the roller coaster, but let me know in the comment section below, what did you think about this week's episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What are your predictions? Who do you think the CEO is going to be? Is the deal going to go through? Who is going to win this game of Succession? As always, my name is Sharonda from payorwait, and if you like what you saw today, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, share this video with your friends, and make sure you hit the notification bell. And I love you guys 3000. And until I see you again, bye.